Yak Tot. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day. My name is Colleen James. My Tlingit name is Ach, and I am here at the Juneau campus and so excited for today's program. We have the title of our program today is Aayí Teen Cadiente toostée. My Tlingit instructor is sitting right in front of me, so I'm trying not to sweat bullets here, and that translates to we will live well with our foods. And so excited to have everybody here joining us. I just want to do a quick shameless plug for the Juneau campus from 12 to 4 on Indigenous Peoples Day, which is Monday today. We are hosting free blueberry smoothies, vegan, and we'll have all the ingredients printed out so people could see what's in there, along with vitamin D promotion because it's seasonal affective disorder season, and which is the inspiration for today's discussion. Since time immemorial, our people have known the health benefits of the foods that we harvest and how to put them together. So I'm going to stop and turn it over to our Associate Vice Chancellor, and she's one of my favorite humans ever, Ronalda Cadiente Brown.
Right. Hello, everyone. Pleased to be here with such esteemed collaborators. We're getting ready for this coming Monday, Indigenous Peoples Day, October 9th, and wanted to make mention too, as part of UAS, Ketchikan will be celebrating in conjunction with Ketchikan Indian community their collaboration, conducting student poster sessions. And then in Sitka from 5 to 8:30, a community event, UAS in collaboration with Sitka Tribes of Alaska. And our new Chancellor Palmer will be in Sitka to experience that. So it will be a good grounding of the richness that resides around Southeast Alaska. Today, the theme Aayí Teen Cadiente toostée. We live well with our foods. I want to welcome our speakers today, and as I call on you to introduce yourselves, if you would please share, if you like, an early engagement with our traditional foods that connects your heart with our Southeast region. And so I'll begin, please, with Naomi, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and then your early memory connection with our foods.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm here in Ketchikan, home of the Tontaquan and Sanyaquan peoples, and I'll start with my introduction. Kase yuchat duasak, wishkitan nachat sati, tus hit ayachat, akquan away, yuhan, daknak away haani, dakdaintan yari ayachat. My Tlingit name is Kase, which is after my grandmother. And Wishkitan, my family comes from the Berners Bay area, Occoquan, and my father's people are Dakdaintan from Huna. And one of my earliest memories, when you said Southeast, my mind switched because I grew up a little bit up north. And so I have this memory of going to Ekwak in a grumman goose, flying in with my dad and just picking blueberries all day long. And but there are some pictures of me that I didn't really need clothes. I just had my sandals on and I was with the blueberries. But so that was a little bit embarrassing. But so that's one story. Another one was on Prince of Wales Island in Klawak, and my dad used to take us out, and we would get yain, the sea cucumber, or yanu, if you're a Haida. And I was the oldest out of 5 children and was a little bit bossy, maybe My siblings would definitely tell you that. And we had one kind of spear type device. And so I always got that one because I never wanted to touch them. And my siblings would run around at low tide and get the sea cucumbers. And anyway, it's funny to me now because I'm out there today teaching other youth and children or anybody that wants to learn how to gather some of the foods and our plants and medicines. And so now I have to do it all myself, but it's interesting. It was such a wonderful memory, and I love all the memories, and a lot of my favorite memories are around our foods. Yeah, Gunakchish.
Beautiful, Gunakchish. And Forrest, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Forrest Haven. My Tsamaliak name is Goipasha Hanak. I'm Simsian, Lukshgeek, Eagle Clan, but my mother is also a grandchild of the Kiksadi out of Sitka, Sheetkukwan. Foods. Oh, I love talking about this. So a couple of I grew up in Metlakatla, and so some of my earliest memories are going to dig for cockles with my mother in the winter for the low tides. And this was, of course, in, like early 80s. I was probably like 4 or 5 years old. And so my job, when you're that little, you're not really useful with the hard work, but you still have to contribute, right? You start really young. And so my job at the time was holding the flashlight for my mom while she's digging for cockles. And I just loved that whole process and bringing them home and being involved. And my other, I think, favorite memory is around herring eggs. Every spring, my grandmother was a Diedrichsen, so we had Herbie Diedrichsen was a very close first cousin of hers, and he used to send us 2 50-pound fish boxes of herring eggs from Sitka every single spring, and it was such a wonderful marker of spring. And it was that would be everybody, the cousins, the aunts and uncles, everybody would go to Graham's house, and we'd be helping to cut up the branches and put them in bags and pass them out to the extended family. And then we'd always have a big feast that night, and everybody brought something. It was we're kind of clearing out the last of our winter stores, and bringing your dried fish, or someone brings the Olgan grease, someone brings the berries. And I really love that. And even talking about it now, I can hear in my mind the sound of a table full of people eating herring eggs, which is this wonderful kind of crunchy popping sound that no other food sounds like that when you eat it. So yeah, those are my 2 very cherished early memories.
Beautiful, and I'm getting hungry. That was a great description. And Naomi, welcome. We are asking for an introduction and a brief memory, if you would share about your earliest or early memories connection with our traditional foods. And you're there we go. Perfect.
Okay. I'm a teacher. I teach Tsimshian studies. Here's my class. I'm busy all the time. I've got 97 students this year. From Metlakatla, Eagle Clan, and I think maybe my favorite phrase is AAMA XALDAWXGA WÜNEEYA. Food is good medicine. I'm trying to keep it short and sweet. It's middle school. They're a little bit battleish right now. But seaweed, I think seaweed is probably my best memories around our food, earliest memories. And just to learn how to move with the tides. My papa always said the tide waits for nobody. I have a lot more to say, but they're so loud and I'm sorry.
I love middle school. Good Ashish, I appreciate that. And then Xh'unei, if you would mind sharing.
Oh, excellent. How Chish Stakat Johan Xh'unei Axai was 8 hu ke wuchin khasati yaiki Atlan Chish Dakil Ach Kadena Dati Gini Yata Ach tu ye ke haste ani kache ye jetuni ya achwa ohan akwan ani kak yechti tan kawushki tan ye ani kak aya ye owa ohan ya tant akwan kashit kakwan aya we UAS se akaye yeti jalta kat at kha we kha ani kha ha kita ku de kina kha tsutskan wuchin ke hagachletzin ltakat yuhan. My name is Xh'unei. I'm Llukach at the double-headed eagle on our Haida side, Yupik and Sami. And I'm so grateful that we're working on the land of the Occoquan peoples, the Yaxtitan and the Wushkitan, and their stewardship is a major reason why we can gather foods where some of us live. And we're in different locations, but as a Juno hosted event, Occoquan Ani is perhaps a better name for a Juno. We just want to acknowledge the two clans who do a lot for us and provide a lot for us and are wonderful hosts. I grew up in Skagway. I was born in Skagway, and so my early memories are fishing for king salmon with my grandpa. And things are different now. It seems like the king salmon used to be so big. And so it's, I think you win with a 30-pounder these days, maybe. And I just remember catching fish that were much larger than that. And so these are things I think about in warmth because my grandfather had two boats that I remember. The first one were combinations of his first three grandchildren, Son Limar for Sonny, Lee, and Marion. And the second one, which was probably a much better boat, was the Lance Renee, named after the fourth grandchild, which was me, and the fifth, which was my cousin. And so we used to go out fishing, and he'd let us drive the boat, and it was just a wonderful life out on the ocean. And then the other thing I remember is how much my grandparents loved berries. Just as the fall came, all the different berries that would cycle through, and the people that would come over to trade foods with us coming down from Carcross and coming over from Haines, and just as people, it was like, we get soap berries and you guys can have access to hooligans, so we'll trade. And and I also remember you've got to know what people's expectations are, because one time an elder contacted me and said, I'll bring some moose meat and you give me some hooligan. It's like, okay, great. And I gave her a couple of gallons, and she was disappointed. She wanted like a whole cooler full, and it wasn't a fair trade. She brought down lots of moose meat, and so I said, okay, next time I got to plan this out. I was like, well, how much are you bringing? I don't want to be embarrassed with my little 2 gallons of hooligan. So, but she was lovely. She loved them and she appreciated them. She just teased me a little bit. Sheesh.
Well, sheesh for that. Colleen, I would you like to answer that question as well, your early memory?
Thank you. So it brings me back to when growing up in Ketchikan. So I grew up mostly in Ketchikan, and then I would spend summers and major holidays with my grandma Jessie in Metlakatla. But this question brought me back to when my mom and dad would fill up the car with my cousins and I, our truck. And this is the time before you had to have seat belts. We used to sit in the back and we would drive up the mountain, and my mom would have us talking really loud. My dad would be telling us jokes, stories, making really loud noise to let the bears know that we were out amongst them, harvesting berries as well. And for me, that's my favorite memory. It's just going back with all of my cousins, trying to fill up our buckets. And we probably could have, but half of the berries ended up in our mouths, and I'm sure that was frustrating for my mom. But anyway, Gunalchish for letting me go back to my childhood there, Ronalda. That was a great invitation.
Appreciate all of this richness. I'll share very briefly. I grew up here in Juneau. I am Teaquaidi, which I guess your story about being noisy for the bears makes good sense. That early memory, it was way before we had the Auk Bay ferry terminal. And when the tide would go out and the herring were running, there'd be pools. And remember driving out, lots of excitement in the car, and we had big buckets. And as little children, we were running through the pools, snatching up live herring into the buckets, and going home, and my father and mother frying them up and eating them with the eggs intact. So good food, good memories. I think today we have Xh'unei, you're sharing a story, and Colleen, if I'm missing anything in terms of sequence, please don't hesitate to step in. So I'll turn it over to you, Xh'unei.
Gunalchish and Gunalchish, Colleen, for all of your work putting this together. It's a wonderful vision, and Gunalchish, Ronalda, for all of your leadership and advocacy for the work that we do at UAS. Before I tell this story, I'll just say, I just want to acknowledge the two of you for being pillars on our campus and just really being role models in our community as well. Colleen, the amount of love that you show to our people is something I hope everybody can replicate. And Ronalda, I just love the way that you're able to tell me how to say things better, because I do get I want to fight the system, and you show me how to fight it without painting yourself into a corner. So Gunalchish Tlay. Ya shkashnik tuasagu yin ayaka kwashanik ade awach waach kashkawu idach kashkawu kakwidich wusatian ya hu awe ausaku wishkashnik dukak idach aya shadag hastu ay ko awe kicks adi shitka kicks adi eka hastu ay sati kicks adach awilta katas. This story that I would like to tell, I learned it from Cyril George. We had him tell it to us in Tlingit. He learned it from his uncle, Robert Zuboff. They were both Kakweidi from a place called Basket Bay, Kak. The story itself is a Kiksadi story. It belongs to the Kiksadi people who are from Kiks. A lot of them, Helm Bay is what it's called on the maps. It's right next to Qanach, which is Port Stewart on the maps, where the Qanach Adi and the Qanach Tedi are from. And a lot of them are in Sitka, and I just really love working with Kiksadi peoples. I love working with Kakweidi peoples, and I love our stories and the things they show us. I'll tell it in Tlingit and then switch to English. Everything has a spirit, which is why we give respect to all things. Nich aya ashkautliget, deeds are teen, the twausagu and out the deeds aya where Kaitladi. There was a boy named Auktatsin who was playing on the beach. He was playing with snares to snare seagulls. He was practicing. Jatuk oe, jayuk oe, to eat down the waha. A joyke oe, atle, ate tewa, atcha. So suddenly he got real hungry and he yelled up the beach, Mom, bring me something to eat. Yeah, akawash, you do a sago, atwan kanins hat chai. Yeah, Shanya, you do a sago at we chat a ka adach away with do hash aya we a shy Shanya. One canin Shanya coach a go ginky with the tlach yacheti. Konach lidzi. One canins ichai. Ik at ha, ik at. She brought him something we call takawash, which is smoke strips. But the piece that she brought him was they call them the collars, I guess is the local name for it. And when you hang the fish, the oil drips down to that part, and sometimes it gets a little funky, and it can be difficult to eat. Ausanich tach tashte twao shkuun. Aka away. Dark awakik. Hu away ee. Wanachs away with the tach yatach chiti tea. Tashak twashka. So he threw it. He threw that piece of fish that his mom gave him. And he said, yuck, why you give me the moldy part? I don't want that. Yeah, kasha chuti ade awasani ka ade yuk ewatani yadutla teen. It wasn't right the way he did that with his food and the way he talked to his mother. Itcha wan ni sawi to outladis we Kate o our shot with deeds atin. Khati kone aya de ki de awa with the keen. Kasaji would knock. Konach de ki our hood. Echwasaku naksaya. No one really knows why, but that he snared a seagull and it started flying way out to sea. And even though it's just a little seagull, it drug him way out into the ocean. And even though he was going way out, he didn't let go. And he was really scared. He finally let go and he realized he was way out in the ocean. And he started thinking, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to me way out here? To eat with the she. We yakik de goody. Akawe yadudach you has our tea with cool. Aka atcha awe dur echas our tea. Gedein dudach has yawasatak. So this boat came up and these people, they helped him into the boat. And they gave him a blanket and they gave him some food and they really took care of him. The katyeich gone away has to in at hook. Tashawasku un yaki sakshawe aayí has wutien has to in yakikt. The katyeich has to kusti uke. Kanachawe do in has to on. He didn't know how long he was with them. He just stayed with them. They were really nice. He learned about their life. They took really good care of him. They were super kind. He was happy with them. Suddenly one day he got really lonesome and he started thinking about his parents. Where ausatin do yak yautlatish. A joy yeaka the ani digachtukuch. The leader of those people, he said, he could see that lonesomeness on his face, and as soon as he did, he said, let's go back to his land. Het awas kuchat kwanich has wusatien, has to chuch. Which on kwa we chacha dahani kone do in ayashakawaja. He didn't know he was with the salmon people, and they started to take him home, and he was with them. And that salmon leader, the leader of them, started to instruct him. Itla ka iish atkan an kaye hasyati. You do a sago at katukaksa kehin. Katukaksa kehin de ayayan tukhi that Gwelli ish satin keka to yatil kain keka. Kedain aya ek Aka away, a day away to yet ilkaniya, Keshik Gojak. He said, when we go to this place, your parents are at the place where they put up their fish smoking place, at Ani. And the place that they put up fish is called Katukaksakihin, the river that entangles a person's mind. That's where we're going to go. And when you get there, you really have to look at your father. He'll be fishing. Just stare at his face. And the way that you're looking at him, he's gonna carefully gaff you out of the water, and he's not gonna hurt you. He's not gonna kill you. You just gotta look at him really careful in his face. Really stare at him. Do ayachay ausani. Ye awa do ish kein awak ech. Ashukatcho ake awa ich. Yahweh do do shat. Achja. And just like that salmon leader said, he carefully got him out of the water. And before he did, he turned to his wife, the boy's mother, and he said, this fish is, honey, this fish is really staring at me. This is weird. So he took it carefully out. Du tla du jit au sanu. Du tla du jit au sanu koa. Hukone du toasagu sha atakoa awakashi. Au satin ka say ta kayeti. Du yit say di awa. Du yit say di. Kanakoe yawatin. So his mother, he handed her this salmon and she took it and she was putting it on the place where she was cutting the heads off the fish. And she was going to cut it, but then she saw it had a necklace on and she recognized, that's my son's necklace. Ach yit seit aya wasa atnanin. Gadu ish we icht khande aya wo icht qa awe wo sheikh. Kochte hasbuta at. Ja icht keltu yatawal qain my khat. Yeah, waqaqa. Hasaku asa atwune. Atqan hiti. Kaya shakak kina akaya shaktu asaku akakhi sanuku. So the father ran to get the medicine person. And when the medicine person came back with him, he didn't look at that salmon. He just said, I think I know what this is. Put it up on the very top shelf in the smokehouse. Do it carefully. Kun yaki sakshoy aye wutian. Kektehin we kisani. Kanach hasawe kautuji. Ajowe hastu toasagu awastini. Kina as outlet, which again, aka ausatin. Auktatsin yakayeti, auktatsin yakayeti. These little boys, they get real curious, and so they went in there and they were jumping up to see if they can see what's going on with that fish. And they saw that Auktatsin had turned back into a boy, and he had come back. Take talk away hastu, chuchye wutien we chat khwani. Yi sai du yatasu wasa. Shanyak utlach. A joet ketlat yaw ne hasu jiha wati. Ya yi detko awutu saku. Eka kadena dati jitune we aha atchai. Ka kwal haji tas awati atcha kaden gachtu kha. Dasa adach gachtu kha shwecha. Eitlini ka de ye gachtu sani. We chat khwani. A de has tutzachaniya. Wush tutzachaniya. Hakusti ha'atchai hakusti yichsati ye'owa. So he learned a lot about the salmon people. He spent a year with them. They gave him a name. They call him the moldy end of the fish collar. And he learned a lot about the salmon. And he became a medicine person himself. And through stories like this, which are true things, they happened. We know that we know that name. We know where these things happen. We know where that river is. We know that we really take care of our fish. We're very careful when we work on it. We're very careful with everything that we cut off of the fish. We put it back into the ocean. We don't just throw it out. And when people give us food, we eat it carefully, especially what we call shqadat, our traditional foods, because our food is our life. Ye'oweh, g'nachish.
Sheesh. Amazing for you to bring Cyril George's voice here. It was like he was here present, looking at us with his endearing eyes of Salmon Boy. Yeah, he's very precious indeed. The notion too of transformation, and perhaps that's what our mission here might be, to transform learning so that such significant education can happen for all. Next, I believe, is there someone who would like to step forward next? Understanding schedules are tight. If not, I will turn it over to Forrest, if you will.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's sometimes an emphasis on, I like this sort of Western emphasis on, you know, looking at the like micronutrients of our foods, right? And looking at health from that perspective. But in my experience, and I've been very lucky to learn a lot about our traditional foods from Tsimshian people, from Hadas people, and from Tlingit people around Southeast Alaska. And everybody has a little bit different way of doing something, but what I do notice is how much these, like being involved with our foods, it's such a dynamic process of connection and like love. Like it's this thing that brings you together. It connects you to your family, to your ancestors. It even connects you to the future in a way, because you're always thinking about, you know, caring for the resource and concerned, making sure that your nieces and nephews and children learn this stuff with you as well. So it's really this lovely, lovely way of connecting to our ancestors and ourselves and our clans and our communities, and also the land. Like I learned so much about, I've been lucky enough to learn so much about, you know, like what's called the Redoubt Bay area right now in Sitka, where we go to dipnet where I've been going to dipnet for sockeye with some people in Sitka now for about 5 years, and then also Hedda Inlet and Eek around Heidelberg. And the care that goes into this, the care for the species, but so much of our food processes is about love and care for each other. And it's really beautiful. And so much of that is demonstrated with the sharing, right? I've gotten to work with some really high volume harvesters, and they're not doing this out of, it's never just like getting this food for myself, right? It's never, that's not the motivation. When we go out to get all, you know, harvest all this fish or getting herring eggs, it's always, you're always thinking beyond yourself and even beyond your own family. You're thinking about your community and your relatives and other communities. And I'm just so grateful that I've been able to take that time. I have so much more to learn, and no way am I saying I'm an expert, but I'm very grateful to have been able to work with some people that I do consider experts who have taken the time to share with me. And I said this, I think last year at our community feast, and I'll say it again, and I'll never stop saying it. If you know anyone who is an expert or knows about foods, if you just ask them to take you out, it's going to be one of the most rewarding educational experiences of your life, is to go out and learn from people about how to harvest from the land and the gratitude and love that involves. I'll stop there.
I would have to say I've never heard such a condensed, meaningful summary that you provided, you know, touching on that love connection and how we're interconnected through all of this with our community, with our family. And I especially appreciate you know, the connection looking forward, as well as honoring our past. Well, amazing. Thank you. And next we might move on to Kasek.
Thank you. Well, I love what you had to say, Forrest. Thank you. I got all excited both times that when you were speaking, and I get that way around our foods as well, and just getting out on the land and thinking about, you know, that we have so much abundance and so much is available to us. And me growing up, I didn't always have the opportunity to learn some of these things. And so I don't want my grandchildren to have to wait as long as, you know, me to learn. And so I'm really passionate about our foods and our land, and also helping other people discover the power of our indigenous foods. So that my belief is that if we are, the more we learn about these things and maybe try new things and learn to love them. I love that the word love has been mentioned many times. we learn to love this place and people of this place, the lands and the foods, the more likely we are to want to protect it. And so it's not just for today, it's for definitely for tomorrow. And you mentioned the reciprocity and the sharing, and that is actually one of the most beautiful parts, I think, in our culture, that to think about harvesting or going out and getting something for somebody else are opposites. And it's so beautiful. We never have to ask for anything in return. I think that's the thing that has surprised me at a young age. I didn't always believe that, but I really see it as such a powerful way to heal. The more that we can learn about our cultures, the connections with our languages, our songs and stories, and many of our stories and the place names of in this area have to do with food. And I was like, did you know there's a Yana Island? And there's a place in the Misty Fjords called Nettles Slide in English. And I want to go to those places. And so it's also, it's in our ceremonies at Ku'ik with fire dish, and how important it is for our berries. And I have a friend that she calls it, I'm going to be gone for a couple weeks. I'm going to go on a berry bender, or she calls them maybe a berry binge. And I thought, oh, I like those kind of benders and binges. And I, there's so much challenges, so many challenges for our young people today, and really for all of us. And I see it as a way to really strengthen us and really build on the strengths that we already have. And sometimes it can help us remember. I remember bringing a plant to an elder, and they really weren't sure what they were going to speak about, but it was like it woke up something in this elder, and they started speaking about Devil's Club and how they used it before hunting, and all of the different and how the deer didn't see him when he used Devil's Club. And there were so many lessons and what our elders have had to say. So I really appreciate also the story Xh'unei and about the salmon boy. And I feel like everything is connected. And that's another part of maybe some of our teachings that I didn't quite understand. I was younger, but I see everybody's like, how is that connected? How is food sovereignty connected to health and well-being? And it definitely is. Social justice and equity. I think I get really passionate about making sure that our people have access to these foods as well. And so some of that could be learning about protecting the herring and our salmon and all of the areas, really. And so I could go, I'm kind of going all over the place, but I really, I call it a Tlingit foodie. Tlingit foodie. We need some t-shirts like that, maybe. But and I just can't overstate the power of our foods and our medicines and our cultures, our languages, the arts. And I think that our native foods can heal our bodies. They can heal our spirits as well. And I can't think of any better way to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day than to be talking about and maybe eating some of our foods. And today I feel so blessed because I know a lot of our neighbors in the Yukon aren't able to get salmon. And so this is where these things are real. And how can we help our neighbors and our families that are in different regions? And so I think it's coming to that where we really need to think about not just our own communities, but outside in all of our communities, and how can we help, really make sure that these things are available for the next 7 generations. So yeah, I was able to take out some salmon some sockeye out of the smokehouse today. And of course I have to share. And so I'm excited about when I'm done here, it'll be just around a little bit late for lunch, but I'll be able to go and deliver to some of my friends and elders And it's just, it always makes me feel so good to be able to share. And I think that one of the other concerns maybe is, do we share or not share? What do we share? Is it safe to share? And so I also think that our allies and neighbors can be, if we build that trust together, that we can share this knowledge, and we have to share so that our children and grandchildren can learn. So I really enjoy not just identifying some of the plants and foods, but going out with people to harvest them, learning about each of these things during the different seasons, and then bringing it into the table or into the classroom, and actually making something together, and which can take weeks, or sometimes more than just the class size or the classroom time. And then again, the favorite part is the sharing part. And I was on a middle, or it was a kindergarten field trip out by Eagle Beach this summer. And kudos to the wonderful teacher. It was a kindergarten class, and they were learning about our Hudson Bay tea. And before the little kindergartners went out, they learned the Tlingit name. And I also feel a little bit shy about sharing the name, because I'm in the beginning Tlingit, but I'm going to continue to try my best. But they were learning about Sikh Shaltin, and that's the Hudson Bay tea. And so each of these kindergartners knew how to pronounce this much better than I. They were so cute. They had their little buckets around their necks, and they were going out. They had a really good plan. They knew what they were going to do, and they were going to pick together, and they were going to share with their families later after they brought it back to the classroom, and they were going to dry the tea and then have their families come in. And they were so respectful. They took the time way ahead of time to learn about how to harvest the Tlingit name, where they were going to go, and what they were going to do with it. And there was this young boy that dumped his tea out accidentally, and he didn't have very much. And that was the other thing. It wasn't about who was going to get the most or the quantity of things. They were really paying attention not to confuse it with another similar plant that is toxic. And so they were calling it Little Fuzzy underneath, and they were looking for the right color and the smell, picking one at a time. And so after all of that, this little boy dumped his tea out, and you could tell he was going to be a little upset. But another little boy came over and said, "It's a good thing we're working Wuch'in." And I just thought, oh, that is so beautiful. These little ones were the teachers, and I learned so much about, just the reverence and how respectful they were. And it was such a different field trip than I've seen in the past. And so I was really honored to be there. And again, it was kudos to the teachers that were taking the time to teach the kids before they went out on the land. And so, yeah, I think I took up a little bit more time than I thought. So I'll stop there as well. Gunakchish.
Appreciate so many of the points that you made. I've had the privilege of working with K through 12 students, and know the student groups to be attentive and respectful and enriched as a result of learning. They have open hearts and are curious, and so tapping into that, and just the notion that everything's connected, that perhaps our challenges that our communities have spread, and how do we bring them together, and this may be the way. So thank you for that. And then Naomi, if you're not tied up yet with the middle schoolers, literally or figuratively, if you wouldn't mind sharing, we're happy you're here.
It was almost literally. But they're gone. I have high schoolers now. I might be a little bit all over the place with mine as well. I'm going to go a little bit backwards. I'm going to highlight 2 different foods or medicines, and then I'm going to explain why food is important. the first one for me is soap berries. The Somali word for it is ash. But it had a specific function. It was our palate cleanser. Because a lot of our foods are pretty oily or greasy, really smoky. So just a little spoonful of ash cleanses your palate, gets the smokiness and all that stuff out. But the neat thing is about it, it has saponins in it. And those help your body absorb more vitamins and minerals than it would on its own. It's a new study. I'm not too sure if our ancestors knew that. Probably did. They were pretty smart. The other one, it's a medicine. It's not exactly food, but you would, our word for you would is sachadau. Sach is to make. Bachdau is a bow. Because it's such a slow growing tree. It's really dense. So it stores up more kinetic energy than any other tree in our area. So it shot our arrows straighter, farther, faster than anything else. That's just an example of how there's knowledge embedded in the words for our foods and medicines. And then the why. So I learned from Desiree Jackson at a conference before. Northwest coastal diet pre-contact was 90% protein, 10% carbs. After contact, completely reversed and like flipped upside down. And that led to a change in facial bone structures, signs of disease in your teeth and in your bones, increase in diabetes, just off the charts, and then cardiovascular diseases where they weren't really much of a thing became a thing because of that shift in diet. And then this book, I don't know if you guys seen it, Feeding the People, Feeding the Spirit. I like to use it when I teach Tsimshian studies. In there's a study that says Northwest coastal people before contact ate close to 200 different species of food on an annual basis. Then it goes on further to estimate how much the average American eats annually now. And it's about 20. So like think of potatoes, for example. Potatoes, mashed potatoes, chips, it makes everything, but that counts as one. And I ask my students usually, what do you think that does to your body? We went from about 200 different foods down to about 20. So obviously we're nutrient deficient, severely nutrient deficient. We're not getting a variety of vitamins and minerals naturally that we used to. So that's why I try to explain why I teach some of our foods, why it's important to reintroduce that stuff again. And also, harvesting is not just getting food. It's not just putting food on your plate. When you follow those protocols that our ancestors did, such as giving away your first harvest or having that mentality of like cyclical thinking or reciprocity, you take care of yourself, you feed your spirit, you're taking care of others, and you're taking care of the land that supports us, that allowed us to thrive in this area since time immemorial. I think that's all I have for right now.
Thank you, Gunalshish Hawa. I wouldn't say that's all. I think there's such incredible food for thought, pun intended, but just amazing the rapid change and the experience that we have followed from the point of contact and how drastically different life is. So I want to extend an appreciation to each of you for sharing with such an open heart, for capturing the importance of mind, body, and spirit, and how that connects us, and how critical it is, like breathing, to have those connections and that sense of well-being and being. That's touching and I think engaging, and I can see the excitement in each of you for the knowledge you've amassed and how generous your spirits are for sharing. So in awe and appreciation, I will turn it back to Colleen. I'm sure, Colleen, you have some thoughts to share as well.
First of all, I'm not sure if you folks saw that I was trying to go back and forth between speaker and gallery. Okay, if you didn't see that, that's okay. But I was trying to, and then I realized on Naomi Leask, when Naomi started speaking, I was so mesmerized that I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot to turn to speaker. So if you see that, if my recording reflects what I was capturing on my screen, you know what, I apologize, but okay, coming back, I just want to say Ganotish to all of you, how and Doikshism Nutsum for everything that you shared. I want to invite you folks back to a second conversation. We're leading up to community feast. Our campus no longer acknowledges Thanksgiving closure. We are now referring to it as fall closure. And for community feast, I'd like to invite you folks to help with another conversation that talks about climate change and overharvesting, and all of these recordings will be available to the public and to our students, preparing them for the dialogue that's going to happen during community feast, where students, faculty, and staff will have an opportunity to sit and share a meal together and have a dialogue over solutions. And so I just want to say thank you folks for contributing to this conversation today. And I actually want to ask Xh'unei or Ronalda to put it back on you folks for any final thoughts before we say goodbye.
Chish wasach twasaku ituik e ertakat yohani tuuk e yeshakat uyiki chatat sa awa atina khayati hajideka kwati ikhwaji ya halil ko hasa in khasati hatat khan kisani ha in khasati ya ye awa khakh chak kwal 1922 owe deu tusaku hajinakhaya hajidakhuta hash aya haqasti qahayq atangi yidat qoa qokhte yanas akh qokhte aya qakhlatit ya haqasti qahayq atangi jawasa kakki aq jaguksa away wa ijis aya ya hayq atangi hajis wudliyekh. I just hope everyone's having an excellent Indigenous Peoples Day. There's so much excellence in this Zoom that it's just sparkling. My screen just sparkles with Indigenous excellence, and it makes me really happy. And I just wanted to reflect on some more words from Kafkawu, Cyril George. He was the champion of one-liners in both Tlingit and in English. But one time we asked him, like, what do learners need to hear to stay motivated and inspired? And at one point in there, he said, I was born in 1922, and we already knew it was drifting, our way of life and our language was drifting out of our hands. But then I think of another speaker named Cadiente Sherman Davis, who would say, but it's echoing back now. It's echoing back, like all this knowledge and all this, and so much has been held on to. But then also, I just had this vision in my head, like recently, where yeah, some things got really pushed. They drifted out to sea. One time, Nora Dowenhauer said, it's like a parachute that just went out of our hands. And she was so poetic, you know, when she was thinking about language loss. But then I had a thought that there was a story where Raven said the world was going to flood, and he told his mom to get into this duck, this black duck. And he said, Heshwasa equati idat, slinket anika ikuchlatit. He said, nothing's going to happen to you. You're going to be okay. You're just going to float on the waves on the world. So I think of like the waves carrying everything back to us. Like, you know, the ocean, it carries things back right into our hands. And wherever you're at with your journey, with knowledge, with Indigenous peoples, with our languages, like, you're welcome into these spaces to learn. And it was made for you. And you're everything that we need to succeed. And for Indigenous peoples, I just wish when I was, especially for the young people, just know that our way of life is a wonderful thing. And there's nothing bad about it. It's nothing shameful. I know people they still make fun of people in the schools. And I know when I was growing up, I didn't hear enough about how wonderful our way of life is from people who were teaching me. So we're changing that. We're part of that change. We're part of that shift as things lean towards a more equitable future. And that leaning doesn't just happen. There's people pushing things in that direction. So we acknowledge everyone who's doing awesome stuff out there. And hope everyone has a fabulous day.
Say, day away, beautifully said, Renee, and we will leave it there. And again, tremendous appreciation and respect for each of you.
Cheese, thank you so much. How on to some.
Bye, everyone. Lovely to see your faces.
Peace.